Good afternoon there, R.Shea Brewing Universe. Head brewer Carl, our Canal Place again. We are in the middle of another scorching hot July, which is perfect weather for another Pilsner. And we are excited to present to you our first Italian Pilsner. So what is Italian Pilsner exactly? An Italian Pilsner, well, it's essentially a German Pils, but with the added step of dry hopping. So you may be wondering, well, what's the difference between a German Pilsner, for example, versus, say, the Czech Pilsner like we've already done? Well, if you've been following along some other videos we've done, other beer releases we've had, and we've already done Czech Pilsner, the Pilsner style that originated in Bohemia in the mid-1800s, and soon, of course, it made its way across the border into Germany and started spreading across the German beer market. And by the late 1800s, lots of German brewers are making their own take on the Pilsner. Now, the difference between a Czech and a German Pilsner is that, essentially, German water was very different from Czech water. So in Czechia, you had very super soft water, which kind of, when you add hops in bitterness to super soft water, there's not as much of a backbone to the bitterness because the water's super soft. In Germany, especially northern Germany, the further north you go, it's a totally different water profile. It's much harder, so that any kind of hop bitterness you get, it's going to be much more pronounced and have much more background. And so because German brewers weren't able to quite replicate these Czech Pilsners because their water was so different, they kind of leaned into what they had, right? So they started making their Pilsners a bit more dry and a bit more bitter, right? They wanted to be more crisp, have much more of a bitter backbone to it. And so essentially that's where you get your modern day German Pilsners from. So fast forward about a century, in the mid-1990s, you had an Italian, Agostino Raglioli, of Birrificio Italiano Brewing Company, which, apologize, I'm probably totally butchering the pronunciation of that. But you had an Italian brewer who learned his craft in Germany. He came back to Italy, opened a brewery, and he started making his own take on the Pilsner called the Tipo Pils. Now, with the Tipo Pils, he started doing something that you weren't allowed to do with German Pilsners, which was dry hopping, which is the added step of adding hops at some point, post the boiling part of the actual brewing process. This is when you're adding hops to a beer when it's already room temperature, it's on the cold side, so you're not really picking up any extra bitterness, but you're locking in a bit more extra flavor and aroma. So, of course, ever since the Tipo Pils came out, it kind of slowly became this sort of industry cult favorite. You ask a lot of breweries around the country, they'll tell you one of their favorite underrated styles that's not super popular is the Italian Pilsner, because it showcases everything we love about a German Pilsner, which is its drinkability, its harmony, its balance, but with the added more pronounced hop bouquet that comes from the addition of the dry hopping. Now, this isn't like dry hopping like you would get with an American IPA. An American IPA using usually American hops, which have much more of an aggressive, piney, catty, citrusy character to it. In Italian Pilsner, you're dry hopping with almost exclusively German or Czech hops, which are much more mild, more scaled back. You get more floral, herbal, earthy, and spicy tones to them. And so you're maintaining a kind of balance and elegance, but you are still getting a bit more of a pronounced hop character than you would already be getting with a German Pilsner otherwise. And of course, you also use, one of the other big differences, generally speaking, you usually, like we did, we added a little bit of Mediterranean Pilsner malt as well. So, go ahead and open one of these bad boys up. Now, the way I like to pour it is, there's a couple different ways to pour a Pilsner, and we might make another video showing you guys how to do that. But what I like to do is, because the foam is always important with the Pilsner, because a lot of the aroma, the oils that you get from the hops that give you the aroma, that's going to be carried in the head itself. So I like to do a couple quick aggressive pours like that, just kind of build up a nice foam base. And we'll let that settle a little bit. Once that settles down, then we're going to basically finish it off by kind of pouring it down the side of the glass like you would normally do with a lot of, American style beers. And this is opposed to, say, like a German style slow pour, where you're basically pouring aggressively, letting it settle, pouring aggressively, let it settle. Because what that does is knocks out a lot of carbonation. Whereas I prefer carbonation in my Pilsners. I think the kind of more spritzy character you get from the carbonation really helps carry the balance of a Pilsner. And so in the brewing process, of course we use clean lager yeast. The brewing process itself, it's like I said, we use all German malts with the exception of we use a little bit of Mediterranean Pilsner malt. This was also a single decocted step mash with first wort hopping, so some more classic traditional German brewing techniques. There, now you see that the head is kind of settled down a little bit. We'll go ahead and finish that off by pouring down the side. Because like I said, I like my Pilsners with that kind of more sparkling character you get. So I don't want to knock out too much carbonation. There we go. Beautiful pour. And of course, I recommend a fluted glass similar to this. You know, anything that's kind of in the family of kind of being slender, long, slim, because that's going to help preserve more of the carbonation. That's also going to help preserve the head retention, and the aromatics aren't going to be escaping as much. As well as with the fluted glass like this, you can see kind of narrows towards the lip. That's also going to help funnel the hop aromatics to the nose. So immediately I'm met with an elegant and yet restrained hop bouquet. There's a very lightly biscuity, grainy, moderately grainy sweet character from the Mediterranean malts that we use. And one of the most important characteristics of this, basically with any German Pilsner or Italian Pilsner for that matter, one of the more important elements is the bitterness and balance. Now, the role of bitterness in a Pilsner is that the bitterness should be there. It should be very present, it should be assertive, but it should be kind of smooth, right? It shouldn't be an unpleasant, harsh bitterness. And more importantly, what I look for in a German Pilsner, and by extension an Italian Pilsner, is you want that bitterness to kind of coat your mouth a little bit. You kind of want it to act as almost like when you have like a slight irritant, say in like the back of your throat and your mouth, it kind of makes you thirsty, right? It kind of makes you want to take a drink of water. And that's what you want with a good German Pils. You want that bitterness to be not an unpleasant, harsh bitterness, but you want it to be present. You kind of want it to beckon you for another sip, which is exactly what the balance I think we got out of this is doing really well. Like I said, that bitterness, it lingers a little bit, it coats the mouth, it kind of tickles the back of the throat, and it really just, it begs you to take another sip. Now, on the nose, immediately you're kind of met with, I get peppercorn, I get freshly cut grass, I get flowers, I get peppermint, and there's a slight undertone of orange rind behind there as well. And so like I said, the hop character, the hops that you're using in the dry hopping, you want to use German hops. So the hops that we use Hallertau Herzbrucker, we use Polaris, and we use Perla. Now Herzbrucker is a more classic, traditional, noble German hop. Polaris and Perla, those are slightly more modern takes on German hops, but they're still German hops, and they still kind of lend themselves to that more German sensibility, more of a mild character. And so from the Herzbrucker, I kind of get a little bit of, I get a little bit of haze, sometimes people get tobacco, earthiness, spiciness. From the Polaris, we get kind of a little bit of a slight fruitiness. Like I think that pairing with the Herzbrucker, that's where we're kind of getting some of that orange rind character from. And Polaris also has herbal quality. Some people get mint. And the Perla is also that we use primarily dry hopping. Perla also lends itself to mint character. And that's where I think we're getting a lot of the kind of fresh cut grass and peppermint notes from. Like I said, everything is in perfect balance. This is not, for a 4.8% beer, for a lower gravity beer, a light beer, this is not light on flavor. Like I said, there's very much a balance to it. It's well carbonated. You get that kind of spritzy liveliness from the carbonation. You get hop character. You get pronounced hop character without it being kind of overbearing like the way you might get with an American IPA. Everything is kind of this harmony with these very light, slightly sweet, grainy, somewhat biscuity malt character, but it's all in balance, right? So you get a slight grainy sweetness, but it's on the side of being dry, but not dry to the point of being, unpleasant to drink. Like I said, the bitterness, it's very present, it's there, but it all lends itself to everything else. In fact, the more you drink of it, the less you even notice that the bitterness is even there, which that's something that, once again, I like to look for in German style Pilsner. So I hope you guys all enjoy this as much as I do. This is, I think, one of the finest beers that we've ever made here at R.Shea, and it's on my list of if I had to choose only a handful of beers that we make that I would have to be stuck drinking for the rest of my life. I think this is one of the better options. Like I said, it's got everything you want. It's drinkable, it's balanced, you get a beautiful hot bouquet. It's a very interesting beer. And I said, it's perfect for a hot July day like this. So everybody, prost, salute, cheers.